All right, well, there's one more thing I want to talk about that sort of relates to lights. In the last video, I mentioned that I was turning off the blob shadow. And let me get a share screen going and I'll show you what I mean. Oops, I don't want that. So we had lerps with his different kinds of shadows here with their directional light. We had soft shadows, we had hard shadows, we had different resolution and different strengths of the shadows. I'm going to turn the shadow off. So now we're not casting any shadows in our scene. This is actually kind of the case that you'd have from those emissive surfaces and from the area light, the baked lights that don't illuminate dynamic objects, and they don't cast shadows. In Unity 4, the shadows were a pro feature, and so it came along the idea of making a blob shadow projector. Now, what a projector is, here, let me turn on this projector here. Let me turn on this projector here. So here's my projector object. It's this little sphere. I'm going to turn off its mesh so that we don't see it. And it, if you look at its local axes, it's pointing out of its forward direction here. It's projecting a texture onto the landscape here over to our side. So the texture that I'm projecting is being projected from that point out onto the world, and you can actually see it's being projected onto lerps as well. And so this is a texture projector. And the material that I'm using here, this checkerboard material, has a special kind of shader on it called a projector multiply shader. From our shader menu, we select projector and multiply, and it has two slots. One is the cookie, and the other is the fall off. So the texture that we're projecting is this checkerboard, and its intensity falls off from white to black as we go out in distance. Now, the reason I've lumped projectors in here with cameras and lighting is that it behaves kind of like a camera. It has a near clip plane and a far clip plane. It has a field of view. It has an aspect ratio. It can be either orthographic or perspective, and it has the various sizes. Now, this is not a terribly useful effect, but in the standard assets utilities under effects, there is a prefab for a blob shadow projector. This is the thing that projects a shadow onto the ground underneath my character. So let me turn that on here. And let me get back to looking at lerps. Let me turn this off because this is not that useful. So what I've done is I've mounted the blob shadow projector up here above lerps, and it's a child of lerps, and it's 3 units above him, turned at 90 degrees, so it's pointing down onto him. And it has a material shadow projector, which has this spotlight on it, and it has this fall off. And so this is the texture that is being projected down onto lerps. Now, like the camera, it has an ignore layer. And right now I have it ignoring the custom ignore layer, which Lerps is a member of. He's a member of the custom ignore layer. And so he's not getting the shadow projected on him. If I turn this to nothing, now you can see the shadow is on Lerps as well as on the ground below. And so I need to make sure that the intervening character here is in a layer that the projector will ignore, so that the uh, blob shadow is projected down onto the ground underneath my character. And you notice as I jump up, the blob shadow gets bigger. That's because it has this field of view of 30 degrees that is the angle of these little white lines here that the texture is projected on. If I could jump even higher, you would find that it would eventually fade away to zero. I believe that's at the far clip plane. Maybe if I set this down to 25 and now jump, oops, set this down to 20 and jump. You notice it fades out as we get closer and closer to the end of the far clipping plane. This is another version of it made by myself. It has a slightly different material on it. It has kind of a darker shadow. I kind of like the darker shadow better. And I got to do the custom ignore here. Otherwise the shadow is on the Lerps as well. So there, and now my shadow is nice and dark when it's close underneath me. I have a far clipping plane of 10 now. And as I jump up, the shadow gets bigger and more diffuse and fades away, as you would expect with diffuse shadow. There are a couple of tricks in setting this up. The shader is this projector multiplier with two slots, one for the cookie, which contains the shadow texture, and two for the fall off, which contains a black and white image that from left to right shows how strong the shadow is. And these textures have to be imported in a particular way. In particular, for the shadow, they both get alpha from grayscale, and the shadow is a default type texture, whereas the fall off is a single channel. This is the projector, and of course, once you've got this all set up and working, you can make him into a prefab, and then your character always has this nice little blob shadow underneath him. So I'm going to stop sharing at that point and end the recording, and I'll see you all in class. Bye.